Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So today I wanted to discuss something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. So I know a lot of you out there are extremely excited about the SNES Classic Mini, whatever the heck it's called, and are really looking forward to that. It's only a few weeks away. Now, pre-orders online, the pre-sales kind of, bonkers, very difficult. They did pre-orders in the middle of the night. It is what it is. Supposedly with Nintendo, saying they're producing a lot more, and word around the street is that physical locations are gonna have a good amount of these. So it's still gonna be very, very likely that you'll be able to get one if you go out and try to grab one the day of release, and then, there'll be shipments throughout the rest of the year. But it's still gonna be a very hot item regardless of how many they produce. But with that, we're given, 21 games, and it's a great selection of games, don't get me wrong. And this is not a discussion of, oh, this should have been on there, that kind of thing. There's been a lot of discussions about that. We all know and wish that Chrono Trigger could have been on this bad boy. I wish Pilot Wings, SimCity, there's a ton of them I wish that could have been on here, but they're not, and we have to deal with that. But what I think would have been awesome is if instead of releasing these little, emulation consoles that are, officially have a limited number of games on them, I think it would have been really awesome if they released these as virtual consoles. Now, they could have gone several directions with that. They could have released the Super Nintendo Mini, maybe a pack-in game or two, whatever. Or, would have been awesome. Go ahead and include the 21 games. But also have it have built-in Wi-Fi. Have, an eShop that only contains Super Nintendo games. And maybe don't throw them all up there at once. But over the months, do some releases here and there. Get that third party, those companies, Konami, Square, all those old school companies who had awesome games on the Super Nintendo, have them the ability to throw up games if they want, and, charge a reasonable price for it. Nintendo gets their cut. These companies still get money off of their games that they released years ago. I think a lot of people would dig that. Not for everyone. Some people just, no matter what, they're not going to pay for their games, and that's fine, when it comes to retro stuff, I guess. I mean, if I'm given the opportunity to have a device that's officially supported and has officially released games, that's a wonderful opportunity for these companies to make money off of what they've done in the past. Some people, no matter what, you're not going to please everybody. I would probably even be annoyed with that if I went on there and they have Super Mario Kart listed for $20 or something. That would be ridiculous. If you're sitting in the reasonable price range, $5, $7, maybe somewhere around there, I think that would be within reason, and a lot of people would scoop these games up. Now, the only issue with that, which I still think it would be an awesome system to have that, like, whoa, I have a virtual Super Nintendo that I can download and buy these games, and they're continually, updating the catalog of games. Maybe Konami's throwing out a few more games, Squaresoft's putting up Chrono Trigger at some point, stuff like that. I think that would be awesome, but then at the same time, you're not getting physical release games, you're getting digital games once again. And then people will still be like, well, why am I going to pay $5, $7 or whatever for a game when I could just RetroPie bro it up? But I think that kind of a release wouldn't be for those people. Wouldn't be for the people who just are like, no, I got my Raspberry Pi and that's it. I'm in it to win it. And I understand that, I really do. But this would be something more for not necessarily collectors, but for people who want to show support to the companies and who want to just download and buy the games that they want to play. If I had a choice, I wouldn't be getting these two Kirby games, to be honest. If I could buy, Legend of Zelda for $5 and Secret of Mana and, stuff like that, yeah, I would do it, and I would limit the stuff that I didn't want. Like Yoshi's Island, I probably wouldn't get that. Metroid, definite. Punch-Out, at some point I probably would want to grab it. Same thing with Contra. Donkey Kong Country, that's a maybe for me. Earthbound definitely, F-Zero definitely, Final Fantasy definitely. I think it would be very awesome to have a console like that where you're given the opportunity to only get those games. Nintendo could have done this very, easily, in my opinion. They have the infrastructure. They're able to support an eShop on a device like this. They could have. Our $35 Raspberry Pi 3s have built-in Wi-Fi. These systems that they've released could have built-in Wi-Fi at a very minimal cost. No big deal. And, then have some kind of account integration. But then the issue comes into that if you did that, now the games are tied to that console or to that account, depending upon how they did it. Like back when the Wii first released, the Virtual Console, everything was essentially tied to the console. With your network ID, if something happened to your Wii, you could get a transfer. They would hook you up. But essentially there were no real accounts at that time. And then, with the Wii U and the 3DS and whatnot, now your games kind of are tied to an account, even though you can't just go onto another system and download them. You would have to do a system transfer, that kind of thing. So it's kind of weird, but Nintendo's never had the best online integration. But for something simple like this, where it's like, hey, let's just have a little store, you can buy some games, that would be pretty sweet, I think. And maybe they could have where, I wouldn't want to see it flooded with like indie developers necessarily, but maybe you have to go through that Nintendo licensing or authorization or something, and companies could release like new Super Nintendo games. I think that would be cool. Even like maybe Squaresoft or Square Enix, sorry, they could put out Secret of Mana 2 on there. They could put maybe a whole new Secret of Mana game, maybe a whole new Final Fantasy game. Maybe Nintendo could drop like some kind of new Star Fox game on there. A new Mega Man game from Capcom, that are all programmed in the way that a Super Nintendo game would be, as far as the artwork and playability goes. I think that would be kind of neat. Missed opportunity, maybe, but most likely not, because Nintendo's going to want to push those Nintendo Switches, is why we don't have what I'm talking about. I mean, it would have been awesome with the NES to have that. The NES Classic, if it was online enabled and you could buy and download games, and there's a lot of new NES games that have been released. Haunted Halloween 85 and 86, that company could have thrown their games up on there. There's been a few of them that I've played that are just cool. That would have been nice to be able to get that out to the public. And Nintendo they won't do something like that. The only reason they've produced these classic systems, I think, is it's a marketing ploy to push the Nintendo name, to push more Nintendo Switches. It's just a given, So a virtual console, which they plan on doing on the Nintendo Switch, and they've had on, last few systems that they've released, I don't think they're going to want to jeopardize somebody saying, you know what, I want to play these classic games legally. How can I do that? Now, if you're given the opportunity to buy a $60 to $80 box to do that, or the other option is a $300 system to do that, if the people don't want the games that are on the system, they're going to go to the cheaper end of it to get these classic games. So it wouldn't make sense for Nintendo to want to do that. It wouldn't. It's just kind of dreaming. I really wish they would. That would be awesome. Still, we could all dream, It just harkens back to the good old days when we were youngsters, and you would think up like, oh, the ultimate video game would be this, or the most awesome system would be this, and you talking with your friends and coming up with crazy ideas and stuff like that. That's really what this conversation is kind of going back to, is just the dreams of what could have been and would have been awesome. Maybe not everybody's going to agree with me on this. I think it would have been cool. Oh man, still getting over this sickness. And then the other thing, like, that I think would have been awesome, like with the SNES Mini anyway, is if they made the cartridge slot where it's an actual slot, and maybe it doesn't read cartridges, but they could sell NFC based games and little Super Nintendo cartridges. Like, you could have a little miniature cartridge that has an NFC chip in it, or sticker, you know, whatever, and you plug it into your system and it reads the game. I think that would have been awesome. Yeah, there's some issues there, and we can all argue that because people could just clone the NFC chip, but it could also be a thing where, you know, then it loses collector value for some people. For me, I wouldn't really care, but some people, they would just boycott the whole thing. But if it had an NFC chip in there and it was unique, and it would have to download to your system, and once that was done, that cartridge was tied to your system, I wouldn't mind that, but a lot of people wouldn't want that. You know, then the other thing they could do is it's just a blanket, you know, the same NFC for each of that same game. Like if it was Evo, for example, all of them had the same NFC chip in there, so there was no uniqueness to it, and every one of them just worked on the system. So if you wanted to trade somebody or sell it, boom, it would work on their system. But then it does open up the copying of the NFCs, but people already do that with the amiibos. So it's kind of a thing where either you're going to want the legit product, or you're just going to want to get the benefit from having the product. You know, a lot of people still collect amiibos, and that was kind of the only reason that people cloned amiibos. That's because a lot of them were hard to get or very limited. And then you get some special and unique stuff like in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't even have those amiibos. You know, I have the Breath of the Wild amiibos, but the older Zelda ones, I couldn't get them. The ones that would get you some cool stuff, I couldn't get them. So there's that argument too. So what do you guys think? You know, I think it would have been an awesome option. I'm still excited about the SNES Mini. I can't wait. I've got my Super Nintendo right here, actually, prepping up to do a marathon of that. But I think it's a cool idea. Yeah, there's the pros and cons to it. But hey, what do you guys think? Throw a comment out there. Appreciate it. You know, want to see what you guys got to say. The last video I did about emulation, you know, a little gamer rant on emulation, you guys had a lot of thoughts on that, and it was pretty awesome reading everybody's take on what I had said and seeing, you know, either the people who related to what I said or the people who partially related. It's awesome. You know, I like being part of those discussions. So throw out your comment. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And I will catch y'all next time. Boom!